Hello, everybody. Welcome to this special Easter edition of the Atheist Experience. That was Tom Lair's great poisoning pigeons in the park, which I don't think actually... I got it off, the Dr. Demento thing, and I don't even know if a lot of the people now even remember the Dr. Demento days and all
good
that.
stuff. Good stuff.
So we may be dating ourselves.
Classic, right?
But it's a good spring song, and of course we had the multicolored... I'm not sure if it was in honor of Easter eggs or psychedelics or the brightness of my shirt, but we had that. So welcome everybody to the Atheist Experience. I'm your host, Matt Dillahunty. Joining me this week is Don Baker.
Good to be here.
How you doing?
Great.
Are you enjoying your Easter so far?
So far, I had a little chocolate.
Yes. We've got, chocolate. We've got like chocolate eggs and chocolate crosses and bunnies, and because, it's fun. But we also have our friend here, but we'll get to that later, I guess. The Easter bunny. So we hope everybody is enjoying their holiday as well. By the way, today is also a couple other holidays, and I'll touch on that in a moment. But first, the regular announcements to get out of the way. This is a live, interactive public access television program sponsored by the Atheist community of Austin that provides atheists in the Austin area the opportunity to correct misperceptions, interact with the public, answer questions, ask questions, find out what people believe, why they believe it, and whether or not we agree. Sometimes we will, sometimes we won't. Yeah, that's the way you figure out the way life works, and hopefully it's a pathway to understanding, if not truth, if any such thing is possible. We're sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. The ACA has weekly meetings every Sunday at Romeo's on Barton Springs Road, beginning at around 11 o'clock, except for the first Sunday of the month, when we host a lecture series at the Austin History Center, located at the corner of 9th and Guadalupe. Next month's lecture, and I'll have to dig out the newsletter that's coming out. This is the April issue.
Brand spanking new.
Brand new, just saw it today for the first time. And there's a calendar of events in there, and I'm going to use it directly. Sunday, April 6th will be the ACA lecture, Dr. Charles Jackson, and the topic is What Geology Can Tell Us About Global Warming. It's free and open to the public, as are all of our events. Any atheist or atheist-friendly person is welcome to attend, join us. In addition to this program, by the way, the audio portion of this program is available as a podcast from our website, and the video is available at Google Video. You can go to the ACA website, which is on your screen now, www.atheist-community.org, or you can go to www.atheist-experience.com, click on the show archive link in the upper left-hand corner, and then scroll down. You'll find a listing of the most recent episodes and links to the Google Video and podcast of that. You can also follow another link to expand that list for all shows. I mean, we've been on for 11 years, and most of the shows that we have access to for the library.
4 or 5 years now.
Yeah,
which is quite a lot.
Yeah, there's 4 or 5 years that are actually up on Google Video. To answer a question that we get from time to time, no, we do not still host the audio podcasts of shows that have fallen off that main list, simply because it's bandwidth issues and charges. And while we'd like to have all of them available for quick and easy download, it's just simply not feasible. But we do actually produce DVDs with compilations on there, and
it's cheap.
There are other ways. Plus, it's all available for free at Google Video if you like as well. In addition to this program, the ACA also sponsors a bi-weekly internet audio podcast called The Nonprofits. That's PROPHETS. You can go to nonprofitsradio.com for more information. There's also a link from the Atheist Community website. We are live every other week. However, there's a slight exception. We were live yesterday. And that was a postponement from the week before in order to talk about the recent visit from Richard Dawkins. And a few other things. We'll be live again next week, which is March 29th, from 2 to roughly 3:30 Central. If you would like to listen live, we don't actually take calls, but you can participate in the show live using IRC chat, and there's more information at nonprofitsradio.com, so feel free to drop by there and check that out. In addition to those events, with the ACA also hosts a number of social events throughout the week, including Atheist Happy Hour every Thursday at the Dog and Duck Pub, beginning at around 7 o'clock. And ending whenever. Sometimes it's, depending on who shows up, it's a couple hours. Sometimes we're there till the wee hours of the morning. But it's always a good time, and it's an opportunity to just hang around with like-minded people, which, kind of in response to one of the questions from last week, is one of the primary purposes of the ACA. For those, it seems awkward for people who are religious or who go to church to say, why on earth would you have an atheist group? I mean, why would you get together? Why do you have these meetings? And it's really, in a way, kind of the same reason that churches and other organizations do, and it doesn't have to pertain to any religion. We are social creatures. For atheists out there, they're in the minority. They're often put in positions where they're uncomfortable. They're hanging out with their coworkers who start talking about things that they disagree with, but you don't want to chime in. You don't want to ruin anybody's evening. Sometimes it's difficult to find like-minded people, and so the ACA serves as a conduit to allow like-minded people in the Austin area and around the world now to connect and share ideas and have discussions and feel comfortable and just hang out. So that's one of the primary things. In addition to all of those events, after this program's over, we get together afterwards for dinner. We're going to El Arroyo on 5th Street. The address will be up on your screen in just a second or two. The show runs till 4:30. We get down there around 5 o'clock, and it lasts till about 7. All of our events are open to the public, as I mentioned before. You don't have to be in, but if you're coming down to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, and yes, I'm sticking with the P's for a while, feel free to call in instead. As I said, this is a live public access call-in show. We'll have the number up for you shortly. For those unfamiliar with the format, we just do announcements and then a slight discussion, and then you can call in about either what we're talking about or whatever floats your boat. So we'll have the number up in a little while.
Yeah.
I think that's all of the announcements that I had to get through. So those of you fast forwarding, I wish, the podcast after the fact, I'm going to have to come up with a signal to stop, okay, now we're moving on.
Right.
So happy Easter.
I guess so.
I guess. I have an announcement or warning or to read from one of the listeners of the show.
It's very clever.
Yes, it's from Robert Grimm, and the only reason he's not reading himself is because we're not able to make calls out directly from here easily. And he says, I would like to wish everyone a happy Zombie Awareness Day and remind everyone to aim for the head. Let us not forget the story of the Roman centurion who forgot this most important of rules. His gut-shot blunder during the small zombie outbreak in Jerusalem around 30 CE led to millions more deaths throughout the centuries that followed. If you don't aim for the head, your zombie may go on to found a major religion, and we already have more than enough of those. So it's Zombie Awareness
Week. We've got a few pokes in already between the bunny on the cross. For those of you listening on the audio, we have a little bunny on a cross. It says irony over the top, which is kind of ironic. Anyway, so today I didn't want to do quite so many pokes out the first here. I wanted to talk about Easter. You can make me be
the bad guy. You can be the good cop, bad guy.
I wanted to talk about Easter and sort of talk about, since today is Easter, we want to talk about what people really should know about Easter. And not surprisingly, you won't learn a lot of this from church, right? So you should learn from us instead, because if they told you in church, they wouldn't stay in business. So today I want to talk about just five kind of semi-random topics having to do with Easter that really people really ought to know. One is the nature of Jesus, the mythology of the resurrection, and holiday co-opting, some of the biblical problems with Easter, and the notion of substitute sacrifice, which is kind of a moral issue, a morality issue. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. So on the nature of Jesus, Tracy and I did a cartoon both in our newsletter and on the website. So was Jesus a God? Is he a man? Or something else? Okay, so if Jesus is a God, well, did Jesus die on the cross, or did he not die on the cross? Right. So one or the other of those two things happened. Right. So if he died on the cross, your God is dead. Right. Game over. Insert your tithe to play again. If he did not die on the cross, then there's no real sacrifice. Right. I have trouble empathizing with the suffering of a God. I mean, if he's all powerful. If a God is all powerful, then does it really suffer? So, in a sense, this cross thing is really just gory, sadomasochistic performance art. Right? It's sadomasochistic because God is supposedly killing himself to appease himself, and it's just really kind of silly in a gory way. If Jesus was a man, then what about all the people that have been killed in his name? Millions of people. Things like the Crusades, the Inquisition, the Holocaust, all these things. So, and if Jesus died for your sins, and killing is a sin, then killing for Jesus is apparently morally neutral, right? Because Jesus forgives you for killing in his name. So what sense does that make? Apparently, he's just a blank check to go off and kill. So what else is there? Well, Jesus could be sort of some God-man hybrid. Maybe he's a man just when you're supposed to be empathizing with his suffering, and a God just when you're supposed to go out and kick somebody else's ass in his name, but it's kind of a bait and switch thing. We think Jesus is a myth. So, in a sense, Christianity is sort of really depraved because you have all of the sadomasochism and killing going on, and it's just for a myth. So, so that brings us to the topic of mythology, right? There's a god by the name of Attis, who was a Roman vegetation god, who was born of a virgin, died, and resurrected between the days of March 25th and 22nd and March 25th, around 200 BCE. This is before Christ. The festival began as a day of blood on Black Friday and culminated after 3 days in a day of rejoicing over the resurrection. He is considered to be the Father and Son combined. So that's Attis. We have Horus, born of a virgin. Horus is a Egyptian god, born of a virgin. Again, has identity issues with his father Osiris. Isis and Horus. Isis is the mother, was the source of the original Madonna and Child. You can trace that back if you watch my Guadalupe show. You'll see that. Was followed by 3 wise men. Was baptized. Performed walking on water. Had 12 disciples. Was crucified, entombed, and rose again. Mithra, an Indo-Iranian sun god, had a virgin birth on December 25th, was resurrected, soul ascended through the 7 spheres, which is presumably heaven. There's Tammuz, there's Dionysus, Adonis. So there's all these gods. All of them, by the way, predated Jesus, who were born under magical circumstances, were killed and died and were resurrected. Many of them are savior gods. Many of them have issues, father-son issues, identity issues. And so when you put all these all in a row, it makes you wonder, well, gosh, how can you claim that these are false and the Jesus thing is true? It just doesn't make any sense. So, but it does beg for an explanation. Why are there so many similarities? And the answer is actually quite similar, or simple.
Wait, I know.
You know. Well, tell me.
I heard this because I asked a Christian about this one time, about, why are there all these similarities? And it turns out that the devil went back in time, knowing ahead of time that Jesus was going to come, and he manufactured all these fictitious, pseudo-Christs that came before in order to take credence away from the one real one.
That's right, and that claim actually existed quite a long time ago.
Yeah.
That Satan went back in reverse time and played games, and
he's so clever.
He's so clever. So that's kind of a lame explanation. Okay, I hope everybody believes that's a lame explanation. The real explanation is that all of these societies that had these resurrected gods were agricultural societies, and when you plant crops and you deal with the harvest and all these things, you worry a lot about the seasons, right? You want to plant in the spring, you want to reap in the fall, and you want to endure through the winter. And so this whole enduring through the winter is very important, and the rebirth, or the coming of spring and the setting up again of all these plants coming up is a big deal. And all of these cultures, cultures have celebrations in the spring about birth and fertility, and not surprisingly, this is where we get our little eggy things, right? We got eggs and we've got bunnies, and this is all fertility. This is all new life, right? What are bunnies famous for? They're famous for making new bunnies, right? They're good at that. So that's where this all comes from. And if you want to read more about that, so before we go on, so the sun in these cultures becomes anthropomorphized, and its trip up and down in the seasons becomes kind of the basis of a story that turns into a mythology. So it's not just, it's they sort of forget it's fictional, and they turn it into something more than it is. And if you want to read more about this, go read Joseph Campbell, who did a lot of research on the different types of myths and the commonalities and where they come from. Unfortunately, he's died, but he's a very interesting guy.
Which reminds me, and not to interrupt your whole lecture,
go ahead.
We noted this actually in the non-profits as well. Arthur C. Clarke has died.
Yeah,
within the
it's pretty
past few
sad.
days.
It's a pretty sad thing.
We had a brief discussion about the nonprofit, so I'm not going to take up much time with it. But for those who know or knew of Clark, not only was he a science fiction writer, but he's basically responsible for why we have cell phones and geosynchronous satellites and things like that. He was very creative, very scientific, but he also was non-religious, atheist, and made a specific provision that no religious sentiments or thoughts or any of that would be a part of his funeral. So he was to have an entirely secular funeral. So secular funerals do occur, and Arthur C. Clarke's proof of it.
Right, right.
90 years old.
Everybody wants to celebrate the life of someone and their achievements and those sorts of things. And he's kind of he's someone who achieved a lot in his life and influenced a lot of folks.
I'm going to move the bunny back.
You're going to move the bunny?
Just,
Okay.
just so it's not in my face
So,
every time.
so
I
now
look
that
at
you
it.
got the bunny out, I mean, this is a very good time to talk about co-opting holidays, right? So Christmas and Easter, probably among other holidays, are co-opted from earlier holidays, right? So we talked about the fertility festivals and these sorts of things. So if you are inventing a new religion, that's a great way to co-opt the old ones, right? It's just to create your holidays and things around the same time and just kind of dovetail with the thinking, and that way you can kind of shuffle people in the front door and get them in. So
Yeah, it's kind of it's not so much of a you're inventing a new religion. It's if you're trying to get your religious beliefs to merge with those of an existing civilization, like which was the case in Rome. The Romans would accuse the Christians of being atheists because they didn't believe in the Roman gods. And the Christians are like, oh, no, we're not atheists. You mean like those Greek atheists who don't believe in anything anymore. We actually believe in a God, and actually he's quite like yours. And then they begin to merge, and all of a sudden you've got the Jesus culture, the Mithra culture, and then the Romans kind of adopting over, and these holidays just kind of get co-opted.
Right, right. And so, for those of you claiming that Jesus was real and was died on the cross around this time, you've got to, isn't it a very odd coincidence that you chose the exact same date as Attis and Mithra and all these others, right? That happened to just be the equinox, right?
And so the wonderful irony here is that once you steal somebody else's religion to make it your own, it's now subject to being stolen by other people to make it their own as well. And that's why we have our bunny.
Reminds me of those missionaries that go in after the first wave of missionaries and convert the converted folks to Mormonism or Protestantism or whatever. It's kind of like this little horse trading here. So we can tell that Easter and Christmas are co-opted from earlier holidays because there's remnants of those earlier holidays around. So with Easter, the tradition of not wearing white until Easter actually relates to Ostera, who is the Norse goddess of fertility, who happens to be what the holiday was named after.
Yeah, Esther.
Okay, it has a lot of different variations. So the bunnies and eggs we've already talked about are fertility symbols.
By the way, for those of you who don't know, bunnies don't actually lay eggs.
Right. That was very confusing to me as a kid, by the way.
Yeah,
I couldn't figure out why bunnies and eggs.
Yeah. I was only being partially funny. There are people out there who, you never really look into stuff like this, and we've got this holiday where there's Easter bunnies and eggs, and the two aren't really connected, except they're both fertility symbols. The bunnies being, hey, we're going to do it like bunnies, and then the eggs being the actual source of procreation.
Right. So here's another irony. Bunnies seem to be an appropriate symbol for the religion bent on using breeding to create new believers. And of course, kids don't go for this killing and resurrection stuff very much. So there has to be something in the eggs, some kid bait of chocolate and brightly colored eggs to bring them in. So there's actually kind of a bit of tension between the Easter bunny and Easter, right? There's actually religions or churches out there that think the Easter bunny should be killed. I have one here saying that it's basically blasphemy and all this, and it's funny to read these things because basically the Christians have co-opted this earlier holiday, so they're the ones that are the ones that need to be deposed, if anything. And there was this incident, I can't remember when it was, but there was an incident in like a stadium where they had some sort of religious revival and had a bunch of families there because it's all family oriented, right? And they actually did a mock killing of the Easter Bunny there, and the kids were in complete horror over the episode. So you can imagine this going on. It's just kind of funny because the adults want to make sure that Christ is the center of the thing, right? So the next topic I wanted to hit, and maybe you can contribute to this, is the whole idea of the Bible and some of the problems there. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but some things need to be mentioned. There's a quote from Paul, 1 Corinthians 1:14. If Christ is not risen, your faith is in vain, and that's certainly true.
Hey, that's one of the few things that I agree with.
Right,
with
right.
Paul.
So I'd like to mention three things with regard to the Bible. First off, the earliest gospel, which is Mark, the earliest versions of Mark ended at verse 16, or chapter 16, verse 8, which is actually a real ending. It's really how it ended. It wasn't like some fragment where they were missing the rest of it. And this is in the 4th century, and this ends with the women leaving the tomb and saying nothing.
Well, what was in the 4th century?
This first version of the gospel that they found.
No, Mark is late 1st century. The oldest written copies that we have are dated from the 4th century,
right.
But they're reliably dated back to late 1st century. I don't want somebody to call in and say, "Oh no, this wasn't in the 4th century."
Okay, well, thanks for the correction. That's helpful. So what you see here is by the 5th century, there's actually 4 different ending Mark, and all of them are dealing with this resurrection thing. And so this begs the question of, and the original version didn't have much in the way of a resurrection. It had some stranger sitting in the tomb saying, "Oh, you're looking for Jesus, he done resurrected," which is, some anonymous person. So apparently that wasn't convincing for the early Christians, so they had to embellish it and add more stuff. So apparently the original author didn't know about this other stuff, or he didn't think it was important, or there was a need for more spin to add more witnesses. This is where all these witnesses and all these appearances show up. That's in the later version of it. So it looks to me very much like an embellishment, right? An embellishment to make it more exciting, more convincing, these sorts of things. And if it's an embellishment, it's not true. So there's other reasons to think it's not true. So there's also in Christianity, there's no agreement on whether Jesus bodily resurrected. If the body if the body disappeared, where did it go? Right? Because dead people don't disappear. We know that.
Actually, they do if you wait long enough.
If you wait long enough, right? It kind of decays. So the lack of the body, in my opinion, serves as the evidence that Jesus never existed in the first place. Right? If you don't have a body at all, and maybe this is why the Christians always ask the atheists, have you found Jesus?
He was behind the sofa the whole time.
Okay. The third thing that needs to be mentioned is that we have the different Gospels and the whole story of the killing and the resurrection and all these things, and they don't agree. Okay, so there's really sort of different versions. They cannot be reconciled. Dan Barker has a famous challenge of please put all these in chronological order and make them make sense, and nobody has responded to that.
Well, nobody's been able to do it satisfactorily.
Right. This
challenge of reconciling the resurrection account, the Easter account, I mean, it grossly predates even Dan Barker. This is, from the dawn of Christianity, people have been trying to do this, or at least since the 4th or 6th century. And there are some people who claim to have been able to do it, and I've read their accounts, and they're wrong. They're just, what you end up doing is picking and choosing.
Right.
And we've talked before about what were Jesus's last words on the cross, and it's different in each of the 4 Gospels. And so the standard reply for most of the apologists is, well, none of them say that those were Jesus's last words. This is just different people recording things that he said near the end. And yet most of the Gospels actually say, what, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? And then he died. Or, into thy hands I commend my spirit, and then he died. It's implied that they're last words, and they're right. The apologists are right. It's not critical as to whether or not those were the exact last words or not. The point is that there are a whole bunch of inconsistencies in this story. We've got a story written by 4 different authors. We know who none of those authors are. The only thing we're certain of is that they're not the Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John that the church slapped on there to make them, more appealing to tradition. But they weren't those individual disciples. We have no idea who they were. There's no autograph copies. They don't agree on all the information. There are inconsistencies. They also have factual errors with regard to known history. There's not a single significant event from the life of Jesus that we can corroborate in any extra-biblical first century contemporary source. Not one. Not a birthday, not an event. You can't find somebody else who talked about walking on water or loaves and fishes or turning water into wine. Nobody reported any of this stuff outside of the Bible. Nobody talks about at the time of death, or at the before the birth, the mystical star that guided the wise men. That's not reported anywhere else. Nobody talks about.
And it exists in all these other religions, by the way.
Yeah,
that's another element that's very common around that time.
There's not a single element of this story that's confirmable outside of here, and really, and they say, well, that's because we collected the best stories and we put them in the Bible, and it's unfair to disregard the Bible. Okay, I agree. It's unfair on the face of it to disregard the Bible out of hand, but that's not what I'm doing. I'm saying there's no idea who wrote any of this. We have no way of verifying it, no autograph copies, and not only are there inconsistencies, but there are known forgeries in there. This whole issue that you brought up with Mark 16 verses 9 through 20, that is slapped on after the fact to add a few more appearances of Jesus and a kind of spin on the Great Commission that ends up being the basis for Pentecostal churches. Because in that 9 through 20 passage, it says you'll know these people because they'll cast out demons in my name, they'll handle deadly serpents and be able to drink poisonous things and not die.
So they're false prophets.
Yeah, somebody has slapped this on after the fact, and then somebody else said, let's make a religion out of that. It's in there, and the earliest manuscripts for the Gospel of Mark don't include that passage.
Well, what annoys me with this is you point out these inconsistencies, and then Christians will say, "Oh, well, they're like a bunch of different viewpoints, and because they all kind of sort of agree, it must be true."
Yeah.
And what is it? What is it?
Yeah. There is no it there.
Right.
There's this kind of quasi narrative that almost tells you something. When was Jesus born? Was it as Matthew's pointing out, when Herod was ruling? Or was it 10 years later, as it's reported in other Gospels, when Quirinius is taken a census?
Well, as far as I know, the birth story is made up much later, right?
You can't, but the point is that you can't, Jesus couldn't have been born at both those times. Those times are mutually exclusive. Herod died in either 4 or 6 BC, and Quirinius' census didn't take place until 4 or 6 CE or AD.
Well, there's 3 different birth lines for Jesus in the Bible. It's like, boy, one wasn't enough. We need 3 conflicting ones.
Yeah.
Got to relate him somehow back to King David.
Why do we still have colors?
We got colors.
Oh, they're gone.
So if you disagree with anything I'm saying, give us a call. We're going to open the phone lines up. Give us a call. We're live today, the 23rd of March.
Yeah, tell me why you believe the Easter story.
Tell me why I'm wrong.
And which Easter story you believe, by the way. I got some puzzling questions we may get to later, and those of you with Bibles handy, as I do, you can look them up and you can try and find out what the answers are. Like, who went to the tomb? What'd they find? But I'll get to those later.
Well, I love this little quote of the women being there, and then they said nothing. Well, how does the author find out what happened if? Oh boy. Anyway, for a good book on that, which I haven't read, I own, but I haven't read, is this book by Gerd Ludemann on the resurrection. He's actually was a theology professor somewhere in Germany, and actually ended up studying it more and more and more, and finally decided, oh, this doesn't make sense, and I got the facts to prove it. So he ended up writing a book on that. He ended up turning into an atheist at the end of the day. So the last thing I want to focus on is the whole purpose of this crucifixion thing. The crucifixion thing gets your attention, this little bunny on the cross kind of gets your attention, doesn't it? So the whole idea of the purpose of this is Jesus died for your sins, and I'd like to deconstruct this. It might take a while. Is the whole purpose of the crucifixion? Well, first off, did Jesus die? Well, if so, then he's dead. Get over it, right? We talked about the nature of Jesus. Was he a God or is he man? If he didn't die, if Jesus lives, then the statement is patently false. Jesus didn't die for your sins because he didn't die. Okay, so that's the first thing that needs to be said. Is if you're going to claim that Jesus is still alive, then Jesus didn't die. Next thing is, what is sin? Well, sin is an offense against God. So first off, if you're going to even accept the notion of sin, which I don't, you're going to need to show that A, God exists, B, he can be offended even though he's supposedly omnipotent, right? And he would be offended by something you would do, which means that you sort of have some sort of power over God. If you can offend him, you have power over him. And 3, that he deeply cares about your sexual thoughts and whether you masturbate and these things. And I just don't find it compelling. So the whole notion of sin is pretty crazy. So then you have this notion of original sin, which is what Jesus is supposed to be addressing, right? So your very existence is an affront to God, right? So the fact that Eve gave Adam an apple in Genesis, which of course is an obvious fable, and obviously entrapment, because mankind was supposed to act as robots and not make intelligent decisions because they didn't have the knowledge to do that, because they hadn't yet eaten from the tree of knowledge. A lot of crazy stuff. God lied also about Adam dying that day. So it's a fable. Okay, so just because of this fable, we're all supposed to owe some sort of debt to somebody. Which is kind of a con game, in my opinion. So the whole original sin. So if you believe in original sin, then you believe that babies deserve to be tortured, which is obviously bullshit. And you probably think that abortion is just fine, right? So because that's just less painful than being tortured, I guess, for all eternity. So that's original sin. The whole purpose of Jesus is to sort of cure the original sin, which is God screw up in the first place. So we have God coming back to appease himself with some sort of blood sacrifice to himself, which is pretty crazy. Supposedly, your offense to God is inherited through your parental line, so you are effectively guilty of something that somebody else did, which is morally reprehensible. Jesus is supposed to fix that somehow. So how can someone else be punished for something that you did? So that's also morally reprehensible, right? We spend a lot of time when we enforce our laws to go after the criminal who actually did some harm to somebody else and make sure that those persons are put in jail, not some random person off the street. So this whole notion of substitutive sacrifice is wrong. Please leave me out of this con game. Finally, God orchestrated the whole thing, but Jews get blamed for it. So this is God's performance art. Has nothing to do with me, but it makes a fine excuse to kill Jews apparently. So this whole thing is a giant extortion racket, and Jesus is just an excuse to say, oh well, he died for my sins. I don't have to take any responsibility for my actions. God still loves me. That's all I had for today.
Okay. Well, we've got at least one caller on the line. The phone lines are open. If any of you want to call in and talk about this or any other subject, you can maybe comment on my bunny thing.
You want to? Let's hear the bunny song.
We'll see if we can do this. I don't know if this will work.
Jesus loves me, the Bible tells me so.
There's our bunny rabbit.
Okay.
For that. Which was just a pleasant surprise. When I actually picked it up, I had no idea it made noise. But Stephanie, is that right?
Yeah.
Hello? I can't hear.
Yes.
Oh,
there you
Hi.
are. Hello.
How you doing?
I'm on. Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear us?
There's a
turn
four.
my phone up.
There's a delay, so it's best to turn
Okay,
your
your
TV.
question was
It's best to turn your TV down and just listen to the phone because there's a delay.
all right. Is that better?
Yes.
Yeah, great.
All right, your question was is how do you know that God is alive and that Jesus is the Son of God and that He lives? Is that one of your questions?
Sure.
Sure.
Is Jesus
Well-
still alive or not?
Of course He is. Where does the sun come from? Where does the air we breathe come
Okay,
from?
so
is it
Jesus
from man?
didn't die, right? So he didn't die
Man
for your
create
sin.
that, things that we cannot explain.
What do you mean?
How does a man that
What?
you cannot explain, you said, I am that I am, right?
No, you asked first where does the sun come from and the oxygen that we breathe,
Right.
and that this is stuff that can't be created by man, and that's why you believe that it's God.
You know that it is. He
No,
said,
no.
I am that I am.
No,
So you know that the sun exists and the air that we breathe every day exists.
right?
Someone had to do it.
No,
with,
not a someone. Not a someone. It has to exist for some explanation. There has to be a reason behind
There's
it.
an
But that doesn't.
explanation. I'm telling you. In the Bible it says, I am that I am. He
Okay.
is who He is.
Okay, and what reason do you have to believe that that's accurate?
Because the reason that I believe is that God says we worship Him in spirit.
How do you know
Spirit
what
and
God
truth.
says? How do you know what God says?
Because it says it said it in the Bible.
So you're saying that you know the Bible's true because the Bible says it's true.
I know the Bible that is true because I've had an experience with
Ah, what
God.
experience?
My own personal experience.
Okay, what experience?
Jesus Christ.
Well-
And when you met Him yourself,
Mm-hmm.
you would know without a shadow of a doubt that He lives.
Okay, so
He lives. His spirit.
okay,
Spirit.
so hang on because I have a couple questions that hopefully you can clear up. One, I used to be a Christian, and I had some experiences that I thought were similar to other people's, but evidently they weren't. If Jesus actually exists and loves me and cares for me, why wouldn't He demonstrate Himself to me in the same way that He's demonstrated Himself to you?
Because you probably didn't ask. And He probably did show you different ways, but you were just ignoring them.
Really? Like what? What kind of ways would He show Himself that I'd ignore?
Tell me some experiences you had to make you turn away from Christ. You said you once were.
My-
And that's one thing there that you're,
Right.
that you're saying there.
See, the
Now,
thing is,
another thing, you don't always have good times. You have bad times, trials and tribulations,
Right.
and all of that.
I understand that. What I'm saying is you're saying that you know the Bible's true because the Bible says so and because Jesus has demonstrated Himself to you.
Of course.
And why wouldn't Jesus demonstrate Himself to everybody else?
He does. We just don't
How?
recognize it.
Okay. How
We
does He do
choose.
this?
We choose.
No. You do not choose what you believe. But what I'm asking is, how
You
does He
choose
demonstrate
to
this?
turn your heart
No.
away from God.
How does He demonstrate this?
How does He? Through His Holy Spirit. The
Okay,
Spirit
that
of
doesn't tell
God.
me anything.
Have you ever experienced the Holy Spirit?
There were things that I used to think were experiences of the Holy Spirit, and I no longer accept that.
Okay, let me ask you. Did you attend the church?
Yes.
What kind of church?
Southern Baptist.
Southern Baptist?
I was also in Pentecostal churches, Church of Christ, a number of different ones. And
okay.
Okay.
Okay. Well, that's the reason I know, because I know that whether I go through the good times, the bad times, I know He's there, and I know that He's all-knowing. And I just really believe that without,
Okay.
sometimes we
So
have
you
doubts.
just feel
We're
it.
human.
So
We
you
have
just
doubts, but God did not
God
say
damn.
that we were not going to have doubts.
so you just feel it and believe that it's true, and that's good enough.
Oh yeah, that is
Okay.
good enough, because like
So-
I said, one day each person will have that personal experience with Him, and you're going to either receive it
Okay. Do
or
you
you're
think
going to
that you
either
can?
turn away when something bad happens in your
I
life.
understand all
That's
that.
when
This
people
is,
want to turn
I
away.
understand. This isn't just an opportunity to preach. I'm asking for evidence. Now,
Evidence.
please let me finish.
Okay.
You believe all this because you feel it. Now, is this anything that you think is demonstrable to anybody else? In other words, you have a personal experience that justifies your belief, and that you believe it sincerely because of your personal experience. Do you think anybody else should believe until they have a personal experience?
Should they believe? Sure, they should believe, because like I said,
So you think
okay, when you think about the reasoning that we have, right or wrong, that's God there.
It is.
And that's in any of us.
Any of
us.
What makes you
we
think that
know
that's God?
That we have to make a choice between right or wrong.
And what makes you think that that's God?
That's there. He puts that in you to make the choices between right or wrong. You don't put those decisions into your mind, your way of thinking.
No, I want to go back to what you answered, and that was you said that, in fact, despite if somebody didn't have a personal experience to prove this, they should still believe. And your justification for this is that right and wrong exists.
You would pray that they would.
Can I get a damn sentence out? Your justification for this
is
that...
That's what Jesus said for us to do. Pray for them.
Okay, you know what? Until you demonstrate existence, I don't give a damn what Jesus says. There's absolutely... The justification that you're using is something that could only possibly be personal. I've had some personal experience, and this justifies my belief. I'm fine with that. Your belief, as far as I can tell, it's justified. I think you're incorrect about what you're calling personal experience because you can't really identify it. Oh, it's just a feeling, or he speaks to me, or right and wrong, or the fact that the sun and everything else exists. No, there's an explanation for why the sun exists, and it's all naturalistic and scientific. There's no reason to hypothesize that there's any sort of supernatural creator or force behind it. What you're basically saying is this all feels good to you. You have plenty of things that you can't explain, and rather than investigating them and trying to find an explanation, you're happier just believing that it's all God and Jesus. Yeah, because it keeps you comfortable when things get bad. Okay, fine. I'm asking why that should be justified to anybody else. And your point was that everyone should believe this, even if they haven't had a personal experience, simply based on the existence of right and wrong. Well, guess what? Right and wrong don't exist. They're labels that we apply to phenomena. And the idea of what qualifies as right or what qualifies as wrong has changed over time. And you don't have to go any further than the book that you idolize to demonstrate this. There are plenty of things that used to be considered wrong or right, which now are either right or wrong.
Slavery is a fine
Slavery.
example.
Your Bible advocates slavery. And while it sounded to me, and I apologize if I'm getting this wrong, but there are certain dialects. I'm betting that you're African American, and I'm betting that your ancestors probably, based on the odds, and I could be wrong, were originally in the United States as slaves. Slavery is advocated by the Bible, and Christians used those passages in the Bible to support slavery. You believe that this God exists. He loves you, and yet you also believe that he advocated and supported slavery. It's in the book that you claim is true because it's true, or at least because you feel like it's true. That's not evidence that applies to anybody else. It's irrational. It's fine for you to believe this. I wish you didn't. I wish you embraced reality. And I really hope that you don't make really big life decisions based on such flimsy and logically flawed evidence. But if you're entitled to believe whatever you want. But when you say other people should also believe, even despite the miraculous personal revelation that you have, now you're making a claim that's not only unjustified, it's harmful. Nobody should believe until it's either been demonstrated through evidence, reasoned argument, personal experience. Some of those are more questionable than others, especially personal experience. Anybody who's ever seen a magic trick done can tell you that personal experience, it's a little flaky on occasion. But so I don't know who's actually on line one or not. Is it? Hello?
Hello?
Who's this?
Oh, this is Mary.
Hey, Mary, how you doing?
Good. I'm new to Austin, and I was watching TV, and I was like, watching the show. Anyways, okay, I have some friends who are atheists, and I kind of felt that way for a while, but why are you having a show on Easter about atheism?
We have a show every Sunday.
Oh, so you have a show every Sunday?
We're here every Sunday. This one just happens to be Easter.
And it happens to be Sunday because we all have Sunday off and we can come down and do the show. So it's
well, what led you to be an atheist then?
That's a fine question.
You want to go?
Well, I personally, one thing you might want to do is take a look at our website. We have a lot of testimonials, which is basically a lot of different people's stories about how they came to atheism. And one thing you'll find when you start reading all these is everybody has a different path. Some people come from a very religious background. They really embrace religion, and then they learn more and more about it. Often that's what happens is they learn enough that they realize that it doesn't make sense anymore. I happen to be someone who wasn't really indoctrinated in religion and was sort of neutral to religion for a long time. But through a lot of personal experiences with dealing with Christians, I began to wonder, why are these sort of good-hearted, genuinely nice people doing these really awful things in many cases?
You don't do awful things too, though?
Well,
sure.
And that actually comes up a lot. Here lately there have been a lot of claims, especially from the creationist and intelligent design folks, that atheism or evolution leads to atheism, leads to Nazism and atrocities and the things committed at the hands of Stalin. The difference is the problem is that atheism doesn't have any dogma or tenets. There's no way to get from a lack of belief in a God to justifying any action, good or bad. One of the common quotes, which came up when Dawkins was here as well, is that without religion, good people do good things and bad people do bad things, and both are likely to do a little of each. In order to get somebody, a good person, to do a truly evil thing, you need religion. Now, and I'm not blaming all religion or religion as a concept or anything else. The problem here is not a particular belief. It's dogmatism and authority.
Well,
There's
can
nothing
you
in
be
it.
dogmatic about being an atheist, though?
No, I'm not.
It's a skeptical position, so it's basically saying until you guys or somebody presents us with some decent evidence for why we should believe these things, we're going to take a very conservative standpoint and say, we don't believe this, and we're not going to base any life decisions on these claims because we just don't believe them.
And I actually used...
I'm just going to say that, I respect that. I respect your position. I believe in God. That's fine. But I think that my belief in God has shown that, to have some faith in Him.
Well, what makes you believe in? Why do you believe in a God?
Because I don't know. I feel like it's just that whole faith thing. It's not necessarily justifiable. It's not like a mathematical equation. I can sit down and go,
Okay.
well, this is.
Can I make a
X, Y,
guess?
Z.
Oh.
What?
Can I make a guess? I'll bet that you grew up in a family that took you to church and inculcated this belief in you before you were really of an old enough age that you could reason these things out yourself.
Well, this is true. My mother did convert to Catholicism, but there was a point in time, and I still do question my faith and how valid it is. I think it's a very important thing.
Good. I think that's admirable.
That's exactly what I ended up doing.
Yeah, you asked about our histories. Matt has a much more interesting history.
I don't know. It's more interesting. My parents were Southern Baptists. We grew up. I was active in church ministries, did outreach stuff, went to camps, witnessed to people, everything else. And then there was a period of time where I was in the Navy where I still believed, but I wasn't active. I didn't go to church often or pray, but it was still a belief. Then later on in life, actually after I was 30, I had some time that I set aside, and I decided, I've done these other jobs. I think perhaps God had wanted me to preach. So what I'm going to do is, hit my knees, pray, do some studying, with the whole purpose of ending up being a minister. And what I found instead was, after a lot of studying over the course of a year and a half or so, maybe two, I got to a point where I clearly could no longer call myself a Christian. And so for a brief time, I probably adopted some kind of nonsensical agnostic type label. And it wasn't long after that, though, that investigating other religions and the fundamental questions about whether or not a God exists, that I just said, I have to acknowledge that I'm an atheist.
So I have a question. Don't you find it interesting how a lot of the religions have similar stories? Maybe not you don't believe in a specific God, but don't you think they're I don't know. I just think it's kind of. It's a pretty hard stance to say you don't believe in anything.
I didn't say I don't believe in anything. I said I don't believe in a God.
Okay.
And the reason is, and when I asked earlier why you believed in God, and your answer is kind of this nondescript, it's a faith thing. Here's my position, really. I care about whether or not what I believe is true. I want to believe as many true things and as few false things as possible. In your life, outside of this one question of the existence of God and the religion that you accept, is there anything else that you apply such loose, faith-based justifications for? I mean, do you just run around believing things just because it feels good to believe them?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't know. Like, originally I was going to school for philosophy, so I do like to question things.
I love to question things. I
what?
question things. And by the way, you know, I'm open to having my mind changed. It's been changed before, but right now, the only things that are going to change my mind are evidence and reasoned argument, appeals to emotion or faith. As a matter of fact, I have kind of formed a new position that faith actually doesn't exist at all. Faith is, in fact, the excuse people give when they're either unable or unwilling to give the real justification for their belief. And because I believe that beliefs aren't anything you can choose, they're not subject to the will. Belief is a state of mind where you are convinced and you accept that a proposition is true. And we're pretty good at not understanding necessarily what all of our reasons are because of the way our brain works. We tend to accept things more on a gut feeling.
Well, we can't sit and reason through every last decision that we make. Right?
You never get anywhere.
We make a lot of decisions on instinct, and we make a lot of decisions based on belief systems or stereotypes of situations or whatever. And I guess the thing that concerns us is when you have a lot of people behaving based on incorrect beliefs, that can be a source of harm. And it's usually a source of harm to the people who are not believers, because those folks tend to believe things that are sort of self-promoting. So you do get persecution of people like atheists, and you do get suppression of science, which harms people, and these sorts of things. So faith to us is kind of a dirty word. We don't like it. We think it's a bad thing. It's not a virtue at all.
Well, I'll continue to respect you if you respect me.
I respect you, but I may not respect your beliefs.
Yeah.
And we can maybe have a dialogue about why that's true.
Clearly, I don't respect your beliefs, but I respect your right to hold them. Because the one thing that we've mentioned many times on the show is that true religious freedom, which I believe is clearly guaranteed by the First Amendment and the relevant law around that, applies to everybody. The matters of conscience are not something you can dictate. There's no way you could have thought crime legislation that has any teeth at all. And the only way that this can be true is if everybody is allowed to hold beliefs and the government remains neutral with regard to all of them, which means no preferential treatment for any religion. I'm opposed to the tax-free status of churches, by the way. But you're allowed to believe it. You're allowed to go out in public and tell people about it, proselytize, share your beliefs, congregate with others, have demonstrations based on your beliefs. All of that just keep the government out of it and make sure that you're not, and I'm not speaking to you specifically, but make sure that each religion is not in a position where they are dictating what other people can and can't do based on their own precepts.
My friend and I got in an argument about this a while ago. Like, I guess the Boy Scouts, I don't know if they get government money or not, but if they do...
They do.
Okay, well, if they do, and if they don't allow gay people in, then I think that's wrong, because it's government subsidized. But if it's not government
you're in agreement with us there.
What?
You're definitely in agreement with us there.
Yeah,
we actually talked about that a couple shows ago.
Government, it's different.
Yeah, we're real big on church-state separation, and we're actually kind of shocked that more religions aren't more excited about it too.
See, I support the Boy Scouts' right to be as bigoted as they want to be, just like I'd support the KKK's right to be as bigoted as they want to be. The difference is, do they get government funding?
Which ultimately is our funding.
Yeah. It means my tax dollars are going to support an organization. And by the way, I was a Cub Scout. And I'm not opposed to everything that Scouting does. Scouting didn't used to be bad. This is a new change when the Mormons took over that put them in a position where they don't allow atheists or homosexuals to be members or troop leaders. Okay, that's fine. They're a private organization. They can discriminate as much as they want. But they don't get to use my tax dollars to do it.
Yeah.
Well, I like to say the state religion won't be your religion, right?
Yeah, I mean that's the whole thing for the separation of church and state. Making sure the government remains neutral is okay. If we start, basically we put the government in a position, partly because of this tax status, to go through and say yes, that's a religion, no, that's not a religion. They did it. I mean, Scientology fought this battle, and the government finally says yes, you're a religion, so now they get their tax-free status. But what that does is it means the government is now endorsing religions
But
and
at the same token, I have a question. Like, okay, you're on public access, right? So doesn't the public and somehow doesn't their money go towards the show? Like, how does that work? Like, I don't really understand.
Some of the money is government money. Some of it is funded by corporations like Time Warner and other cable companies like that.
Well, so would you be like opposed to having like, I don't know, a religious show like right after your show?
No, actually, there's an entire public access channel that's almost all religion, all nonstop.
Okay.
The only requirement is that the public access channels, be completely neutral, that they not come in and censor any ideas. If you come on and you meet the qualifications for being a producer, you go through the training course, you should be able to get a show expressing any idea you want, no matter how crazy it is. And I have no problem at all with there is a religious show, or was, that comes on directly after this. I have no problem with them. They're exercising the same freedoms I am, and as long as we're both allowed to, and one isn't being endorsed over another, it's not a problem. There's twice a year where I get mad about this, and that's when they preempt our show to show the Mormon Conference. They're not local in Austin. They're not on public access.
Right.
They're using this as a form of advertising.
Right. The official policy is that there's preference for locally produced live shows, and here they are, preempting locally produced live shows for something that's nationally produced and not live. So
yeah, but no, I have to, and I would even if I didn't have to, support everybody's religious freedom. Anything else?
Nope, I don't know. I just thought it would be interesting to call.
yeah, well,
Great.
we appreciate you calling.
It was a great call. Thanks a lot. As a reminder to you and anybody else, we're going to El Arroyo after the show's over. We're on for another 30 minutes or so, and we'll be down there at around 5 o'clock till 7-ish. It's on 5th Street, the address on the screen. You're all welcome to come down and join us, any atheist or atheist-friendly person.
Yeah.
Which, it doesn't bother me at all that you believe. You're obviously, not hostile to atheists, so you're welcome. And I we love having conversations about all kinds of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
This is, actually, we got somebody waiting. I'll go ahead and go to. Is it Rob?
Yes, it is.
How you doing, Rob?
Good, man. So I'm an atheist.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting flipping through the channels. Found you guys. That was cool. I am a little concerned, though, about the rabbit on the cross. And here's why. Is that I fear that folks who might be on the edge or might be perhaps open to the discussion might be so at their core offended at the rabbit on the cross that they may not choose to listen. And, it took me many years. I, too, came from Southern Baptist background, and I finally came to the conclusions that you've come to. But, earlier on in the middle of that discovery, if I would have seen that, I might have been somewhat bothered by that.
See, I've actually been waiting for a Christian to call in to tell me that they're offended by this. And the whole reason that I've been waiting for them, why? Because the rabbit technically has nothing at all to do with their religion. And Jesus wasn't the only person crucified, and I haven't actually driven nails. This thing is a parody of a symbol, and the only reason that it caused them offense is because they're reading into this more than what exists. So yes, it was. It might end up being a negative influence on somebody. It might end up being a positive influence on others. One Easter show out of what have I done now? Three or four.
Yeah, we do them every year.
To have a bit of fun with it. Yeah, I understand your point, and I'm not saying you're wrong. It's something I considered, but it's a chance I'm willing to take this year.
Well, it's certainly good in that it caught my attention. So maybe if they're flipping the channels and someone sees the bunny on the cross, they'll go, what the heck's that all about? And stop and listen to you guys. And maybe they'll think a little bit more about some of these questions, the good questions that you brought forth. And
yeah, I don't consider this to remotely be a good
it's not a good
intellectual discussion point. It's just a bit of fun.
Yeah. I have a
Very
couple
good.
comments based on what you said. One is, I think that using a torture device as a symbol of your religion is kind of creepy. So I'm actually a little offended by that, but no one's asked me.
wouldn't that be more? Well, I mean, you have the issue then Catholicism of having him on the cross, and then other religions not. That opens up another discussion.
And a deeper point is, if you happen to catch the beginning of the show, I actually, hit Christianity about 25 different ways, and in effect, I think I did a lot more damage with my little spiel, if people listen to it, than this silly little thing. So, if anything, people should probably be offended by more of what I said than our little eye-catching thing. But
plus, when I got the idea, I ran out and I picked up all this stuff and spent an hour putting it all together. And there's no way I'm going to run out late Saturday night and do all this work and not actually have it up here today. But the other thing,
and the video doesn't reflect. But what is written above the?
It says irony.
Irony, actually, yeah.
It's hard. There, you can kind of see it. Well, that's a good trick, Matt. How do you make it show up?
It's the close-up camera.
Oh, okay.
It's got a different focal length,
Oh,
so it's
Well,
not
thank
as
you for
washed out.
taking
I
my
thought it was magic. Okay.
But yeah, the other point, of course, is related to one of the bumper stickers on my car, which is blasphemy is victimless crime. I don't know that, and I realize that we're from different background or similar backgrounds, and I agree with your point. I mean, this could be something that ends up damaging the case, and it's a point worth considering. But I'm not sure that even when I was a Christian, I would have been offended by this. It would have been more of they're just not taking our religious holiday seriously. I didn't ever run into a whole lot of people who were deeply offended, or would have been offended by things like this. But I guess it varies.
Yeah. So you've raised a good point, and we'd love to hear from other Christians what you think about some of the things we've said, or even this little bunny thing.
Yeah, there's like 30 minutes left in the show. If there are 3 Christians that call in and tell me they're offended by this, I'll take it down.
Now, there's a challenge for you guys.
Really good. Thank you.
Well, thank
Sure.
you. Take
Thanks.
care. Is this a good time to maybe talk about what your plans are for the bunny? For later today and future
Well,
shows.
After I'm sure it's dead, I'm going to take it down from here and put it in a box.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay. And you're going to bring this box back next week, right?
Well, we're going to, yeah, we're going to put it in a box and check the box next week just to make sure the bunny's still there. If it's not there, then I'm going to use that as proof that this bunny has been resurrected.
And it's therefore
Because
supernatural, right?
Among even some of the more famous apologists like Josh McDowell, the empty tomb alone is proof of resurrection. And so if the shoebox is empty next week, clearly we'll have proof of a resurrection. I know the bunny's got Jesus on his side. It even says it like right on his thing. It says, Jesus loves me on it.
Jesus loves me. Yeah.
And he not only brought himself back, he brought Lazarus back. And if you read some of those other accounts, during this whole death and resurrection thing, there were people getting up out of their graves, saints running around all over town. It's curious that nobody else reported any of this. That there's not,
must have been just commonplace. Yeah.
some historian of the time who was taking notes on everything that was going on failed to notice that on this particular day, massive this huge zombie attack it didn't make the papers.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe by then they figured out to get him in the head is this.
They were all stuffed from Passover feast and just were sitting on their ass in the house, and they didn't see the zombies. But where did the zombies go? When they were done roaming around, did they go back to their graves?
Crawl back in
and
their
then
graves?
cover themselves up with dirt? or did they ascend too? And does their ascension kind of take away from Jesus' ascension, since he's supposed to be the only... These are real questions.
Sounds like a really bad horror movie to me.
Yeah, I'm having a bit of fun, but for the people who are claiming that this book is a reliable testimony of real events, please give me an explanation for this stuff. Maybe that's the reason we have zombie movies now. Maybe this has entered the popular culture. It just never got written down properly. But anyway, is it Phil?
Yeah, hi guys.
How you doing, Phil?
Just fine. I wanted to ask you this recent news cycle this last week. We've had a lot of news on the CNN and elsewhere, actually everywhere, about this Reginald Wright guy, the pastor to Barack Obama. And
Yeah.
I've listened very carefully to the reels I've seen of this gentleman, and frankly, he doesn't seem that far off base. Now, a lot of folks are characterizing what Mr. Wright had to say as, anti-Semite, anti just about everything you can imagine, anti-America.
But then you turn around and you look at what some of the conservative religious right folks do, like Pat Robertson and Hagee and the like, and they're talking about the World Trade Center was blamed on lesbians and gay folks and feminists and folks like us.
You're seeing the spin. You're seeing a lot of spin.
Yeah, well, I'm seeing the spin basically on a one-sided thing. I mean, if they want to show original right and say, hey, this guy is doing all this anti-Semite, anti-American rhetoric, why don't we show these other guys that are dissing Catholics, dissing everybody else in the world, and say, hey, let's call it, in other words, nobody's hands are lily white in this whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually answered this similar question earlier, and my point was that we should be much more concerned about John Hagee's endorsement of McCain, because Hagee is there. He's a minister, for folks that don't know, down in San Antonio, and he's a big sort of end times guy. He's a snuff porn salesman as far as I'm concerned. So he's in it to create more activity in the Middle East so he can sell more books and make more money and get fatter. And McCain, I guess, is needing some religious right votes. So I actually am much more concerned about that, and that both of them want to use the U.S. munitions or the war machine to go after Iran, and that's just crazy. That's just crazy. So I think that we should be paying a lot more attention to stuff like that than this smoke and mirrors thing with Obama, personally.
And that's where I kind of chime in, I guess. The thing I feel about it is that you're right. This Hagee character, basically, and if you just notice when John McCain made his tour of the Middle East recently, in kind of in the background there was Lieberman there, and there's no secret to the fact, basically his biography is. It's all about Israel for the most part, and so Hagee and these folks segue into one another and saying, let's do everything we can to support Israel. So that's just one thing. I did have an ulterior motive. That was kind of it right there. Was my ulterior motive. But man, I did want to ask you real quick. I noticed I think I saw a rerun the other day where you said the pool playing Jesus was your kind of Jesus. Are you still playing pool? Do you guys still get together to shoot pool?
The group isn't, but I do.
Do you? I'd like to shoot some pool with you sometime. I don't know how we could hook that up, but
it's really easy. And thank you for making this point. Anybody who doesn't get through on the telephone today or doesn't want to can email tv@atheist-community.org. That goes to myself, the co-host, a lot of people behind the scenes. We can't promise to answer in every email we get, but we do read all of them. We do try to answer the bulk of them. Any feedback, questions, concerns. If you want to reach me directly, and I'm loath to do this on the show, but you can also do president@atheist-community.org. That'll go to me. And yeah, if you're in town and you want to go shoot some pool sometime, I'm down with that.
That's the plan, dude. I used to play over at the side pocket in North Lamar. I live real close to there. Plus, I got a 9-foot table at my house. So
well, good
because see you soon, guy.
Well, good because side pocket's where my locker is. So
oh, really?
That's where I'm at all the time.
All right, dude. Thanks a lot.
See you. So we serve the atheist community and we set up pool dates. And what a good coincidence out of all the pool laws in
TV,
Austin.
Matt.
Yeah. All right. Anybody else wants to challenge me for money? Bring it on. No. Quick. I've forgotten what I was going to say now. Oh, I was going to say something with regard to original. Is it White or Right?
Right.
White.
Jeremiah. Oh.
Jeremiah? What?
Right. It's right. It's right.
Whatever. With regard to Obama's pastor, I don't see this big deal. Obama distanced himself from him, and I think that was a good thing. I think his comments are just as insane and offensive as what I hear from the other side. Not necessarily more so. If much the same way that I equated the Boy Scouts' right to bigotry with KKK's right to bigotry, these guys have a right to be bigots too. It doesn't really surprise me at all that we found a preacher who's a bigot. Ooh, imagine that. I'm shocked. We got, whoops, let's go. Oh, all right. Kevin, if you want to call back, please do. I hit the wrong button on the phone. Is it Deron?
Yeah.
How you doing, Deron?
Hey, man, what's up?
Well, I just hung up on Kevin, so.
Yeah, we're kind of bummed. But go ahead. What do you got?
There's a 4-second delay, so turn down your TV and just focus on the phone. Hello? Well, I'm not quite sure. Oh, wait. Deron?
Yeah, hello?
Well, welcome back.
Oh, okay, cool.
After I made my mistake on this box, they made a mistake in the other room on theirs. So,
it's
welcome back.
Thank you. I wanted to wish you gentlemen a good afternoon and a happy Easter.
Hey, thank you.
I see the bunny rabbit is in a lot of pain there.
Actually, he's tied up really neatly. There's no nails or anything. He'll be fine.
Okay, yeah, no stuffed animals were hurt during this.
Right.
You know, the Easter bunny is a sign of fertility, is it not? It's a sign of,
Yes.
of
Yep.
kind of paganism, right?
Yep.
So it's funny how people would call in and be very adamant about, seeing the bunny on the cross, and to me it's a pagan belief anyway.
Yeah, nobody
The
really
idea
did
of
that.
Easter, isn't it kind of like the Sunday following the spring equinox?
Yeah.
And it's kind of the sign of fertility after winter is over with. Finally crops can grow and life can spring, and bunnies can have sex like rabbits.
Like bunnies.
It's like I don't know. It's funny that I'm watching your show because I've been watching some basketball and stuff, and it's like people need to respect other people's beliefs no matter what they are. However, I do have one question to ask you, gentlemen. If you're not Christian, you're not Muslim, you're not Buddhist, or whatever. To me, Christians are all or religions are all kind of manipulation tools. What are you?
I'm an atheist.
Well, I know, but what?
Oh, you're
what
making
word do you
the
believe in?
thing about atheism tells you what I'm not, but it doesn't tell you what I am. Great point.
So we're
Right.
we're basically skeptics, right? We want to have evidence and we want to have reasons for believing various things, and until we get those things, then we're going to just withhold our endorsement, our belief
But
in those things.
If
So
you want to
skeptics,
focus on
that's
what we
are.
actually are, that skeptic doesn't tell you. It doesn't tell you that much about what you're about in that sense, though. For example, I'm a philosophical naturalist and materialist. I'm a realist. I'm to some degree a rationalist, depending on how you want to define that term. I believe in a great many things, but I only believe things for good reasons.
So what follows as a consequence of these sorts of things is that we're sort of we're big on science and reason, and we're excited about the potential for science to give us technologies that will make our lives better. We don't believe in an afterlife. We don't believe in souls. We believe that this is our only chance here. We have to work together and make things better. You can have a good life, and you can live morally without gods, and you can enjoy yourself here. And there's no need for all that stuff. It's all extraneous. So,
I totally agree with that. See, that's what I believe. See, the Bible is just, to me, it's just a collection of stories. You could call them fables, and I don't mean to offend anyone whose faith is based on the Bible. I mean no offense, but it seems to me like these are all historical documents, and they've also been chosen to be put in the Bible. Like these different writings have been chosen. There are a lot of things that have been taken out of historical reference. There's the Book of Enoch, for example, and there are different books that even talk about the childhood of Jesus Christ. And here's what I believe. Whether or not this Jesus Christ existed or not, whether or not he was actually here on the earth, he did stand for certain things, which I think every human being should strive for. Those things are to
the whole do unto others. Well, that predates him. That was Confucius, and even earlier. So
There's an interesting.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, most Christians would probably say that the Sermon on the Mount is the greatest message ever delivered, and that it summarizes the sum total of what Jesus was saying. I've actually gone through a verse by verse kind of rebuttal to the Sermon on the Mount, because I think if you actually dig in and read it, you'll find that there's a few good things in there, none of which are original to Jesus. There's a lot of bad advice in there as well. This whole thing about take no thought for tomorrow because God's going to provide for you. There's a lot of stuff like that, and appeals to this sin thing. The good things, the turning the other cheek, which all things in moderation, being along those lines. Those good things all predated the golden rule, and his version of the golden rule isn't necessarily even the best. It's a do unto others as you would have them do unto you, which isn't as good as do unto others as they would have you do unto them. Because if I treat you the way I want to be treated, you might not want to be. I might want to be people to be brutally honest with me, And you might not appreciate that. You might appreciate a little more subtlety.
Yeah.
So I'd rather...
This
you
is
know,
nuance, but yeah, yeah.
Well, of course it's nuance.
Yeah. Let me respond to another thing you said. You said the Bible was historical. I would correct you and say that the Bible's kind of a period piece. It's a product of its day. There's a lot of things in it that are not historical, have been proven otherwise. So I'm a little concerned about agreeing on the air here that this is,
I wouldn't call it a historical document.
Yeah, historical document of any sort.
It's a traditional document.
It's a traditional, a period piece, a product of its day, and it shows its age. Like this whole slavery thing, slavery. God endorsed slavery. God was made up, so He endorsed what was going on at the time, right? Yeah. So now.
Well, actually,
anyway,
I don't know if did you have something else, Deron? We kind of got sidetracked. Or no, I lost Deron, I guess. Is Kevin back? Kevin, you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Welcome back. Sorry I hung up on you.
Thank you, thank you.
Fat fingered the button.
I'd just like to, if I may, put my 2 cents in first. What I've heard is that there's more wisdom in Shakespeare than there is in all the Bible.
Probably so. Yeah.
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 I like listening to your show sometimes, from time to time, because I really feel that you guys are the voice of reason.
We try.
I really feel that.
Thank you.
I hope so.
Thank you.
Of course, you're not right all the time, and you're struggling. You're attempting to find out what's going on, and I see that in you guys. Imperfect though it may be, etc., etc. And then I hear your callers, most of whom, have this infantile, pathetic pseudo-logic, which is really scary to me. I mean, these people presumably vote.
Yeah.
Some of them become politicians. They become judges, and they make decisions
Presidents.
based upon weirdo ideas, whether it be gender roles or who knows. An example would be Dr. Laura. I kind of like Dr. Laura. I think you're familiar with her, perhaps.
Well,
But
yeah, in her limited, if she stays in her area of expertise, she's just fine.
Well, I mean, it's kind of, you could, I mean, my personal thing is I kind of like her so-called common sense. But, she thinks it's really horrible for men to stay home with kids. I mean, really?
Mm-hmm.
And then she says, well, no other mammal does that. Now, that's a reason? Oh, come on. You see what I mean? This voice of illogic, prejudice. I mean, where's this coming from? And I enjoy looking at your show because I think you're struggling. You're trying to use reason, knowledge.
Isn't she actually wrong? What about emperor penguins? The females lay the egg, and the males stand there and incubate it while the women go out and get food.
Well, the word when I've heard her.
Yeah.
You see,
Don't emperor penguins qualify
and of
as
course, the
mammals?
seahorse gives birth to the baby, right?
Okay, so we'll have to
But
find a
she
mammal.
says mammals.
Well, that'd be avian.
And so she's going to use animals and then justify our behavior because we're supposed to mimic them. I guess I don't know where she's coming from.
Right.
And to me, that's
it's not
kind of
any more.
crazy.
To me, it's not any better than saying, "Well, we've always done it this way, so we have to keep doing it."
I don't know where the heck she's coming from, but I mean, this is what I mean by this. These prejudices and weird ideas enter into our lives, and
Well, all humans, I think, are very good at sort of rationalizing their viewpoint, and us atheists do it too sometimes, and so we, our motto here is skepticism is a virtue. Call us up and tell us when we're wrong.
Exactly.
We actually appreciate knowing the right answer and knowing when we make a mistake.
well, what I see in you guys is a sense of humility as well, and that's why I enjoy watching you. And I just want to say thank you.
Well, thank you.
Well, great.
Thank
Thanks a
you.
lot
We
for calling,
appreciate
Kevin. We
it.
appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
And you hung up on him. Shameful.
Well, I knew he was going to call in and say that I wasn't perfect and I'm not always right. Why would I want to talk to him? Okay. Crazy.
All right.
You wacky atheist, Joe. Thanks, Kevin. Is it Arthur on this line?
Yes,
How you doing, Arthur?
not too bad. How about yourself?
I'm pretty good.
Hey, so actually, I had a question or a couple questions. And I don't know your name.
I'm Matt.
on TV.
I'm Don.
Matt's the Hawaiian shirt guy?
Yep, that's
Okay.
right.
So
The what guy?
So-
Hawaiian shirt guy.
Oh, I thought he said blinding shirt guy. And I was like, it's okay.
It's okay.
Go ahead.
I'm not insulting your wardrobe there.
It's fine. Everybody else does.
Right. So here's the question I have. And you're Matt, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Here's the name. So you were formerly a person of faith. Was this because you were brought up in the church? Your parents indoctrinated you, the churches, that sort of thing?
I think that's the best explanation. It's not like I recall ever coming to any kind of decision on my own. I was definitely raised a particular way. There was a time in my teen years when I became more active in the church where I had this terrifying concern that getting saved at age 5 couldn't have possibly been real, because I didn't have. I know I couldn't have understood it well at 5 because I just gained a proper understanding in my teen years. So
Right.
clearly I'd just been walking and kind of living this life, but I'd never really done it with the sincere appreciation. So in my teenage years, of course, I got saved again, and probably more than once, because you get saved again, and now that's solved, and then you get hot for a while,
Right.
and then you fall into partying with your friends and stuff, and then you go to camp or a revival, and they talk about, we know, God knows that you've fallen away
Turn
from
the
the
guilt
side.
screws, right.
And then you do now I'm going to rededicate my life. And that probably occurred a few times over, 5-10 years.
Yeah. I can relate to what you're saying.
But let me add, your parents kind of put you on this path, but then you, as an adult, really embraced Christianity, right? You really decided to go in with both feet, right?
Well, I was active in my teen years.
Mm-hmm.
I was fairly inactive during the time that I was in the Navy. Then around the age of 30 or so, I became more active again with the focus on actually becoming a minister. It was my sincere goal to lead people to Christ and fulfill my obligation under 1 Peter 3:15, something that no Christian caller who calls into the show ever seems to be able to do. They don't ever seem to be able to provide the reason for the faith that's with them. It's always this, I kind of believe because of faith, or it feels good. There's no real reason.
It's all based on faith.
Yeah, and see, my problem was...
It can't be quantified or defined. It's just faith. You have to believe, and we all believe it, so you should believe. It's a tremendous amount of peer pressure.
Yep, and when I was unable to actually come up with a reason, I don't fault them for not being able to give reasons, because that's the reason I'm an atheist. I was unable to come up with any reasons to justify these beliefs, and upon examining, find there's no good reason, not only just to believe this particular story, but to believe that any of those stories are actually accurate. It's not even a good reason to hypothesize a God in the first place. I mean, it's, granted the Greeks did it, with Zeus. We need an explanation for lightning, so there's a God up there hurling lightning bolts.
Well, I think it was Napoleon who once said, and I'm probably going to butcher the quote, but he basically said that he loved religion because it was a great way to control the masses.
There's a lot of quotes. There's some
retribution.
quotes that even predate the time of Jesus that have much the same sentiment.
Sure. So I don't know if it was you or the other gentleman that made the comment about he was looking into religion, and the more that he looked into it, the more he realized he couldn't align his belief
Well, I think that's
structure.
true of a lot of atheists. That it's really sort of an intellectual process where we study it. The more I have studied, the less sense Christianity makes to me, and the less sense a lot of other religions make to me. The more I study it, and I think that's true of a lot of atheists.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of an intellectual journey in a sense.
Well, just if I might add just like my own personal experience or viewpoint, because I don't know if I can categorize myself, and if I had to, what I would, but I would say earlier, when I was young, very young, I sort of had fell into a belief structure or a faith structure, and this might sound silly to you, but it stemmed from watching the early evangelical
I'm sorry.
on TV. It was like sort of the Ernest Angley, Rex Lombard show that was on TV.
Right.
And I can remember as early as 6, 7, 8 years old being drawn to that and thinking it was a good thing and that sort of thing. And so I was brought up Catholic, only it was sort of a, once a month Easter, Christmas sort of Catholic household. And then as I got older, my early teens, I thought of myself as a Christian, person of faith, a belief based upon that blinding faith. I couldn't quantify it or define it. It was just something that I thought made me feel good. And so then in my high school years, I, believe it or not, converted to Mormonism. This was brought upon by a tremendous amount of peer pressure. I moved out of my parents' house at an early age and moved in with a friend whose family took me in, and they were Mormon, of course. And so you go to the Mormon Church, and they're beautiful people. They're wonderful people, very hospitable, very friendly, and
I haven't met a
outgoing.
Mormon I didn't like.
From day one, they shake your hand and they just shower you with that love, and you're accepted and you're not judged. And so I sort of gave in to that and thought of myself as becoming a Mormon, so I was baptized into that. And then, interesting enough, in my own life's experience, there was an organization called Young Life, which was a community outreach to junior high and high school youth. And there was this youth minister that used to come on school grounds at the time, and he really, I guess, heavily recruited me to come to the meetings and that sort of thing. So then my senior year, I started going to some of these meetings, and I started questioning the whole Mormon thing. And, of course, he was a born-again Christian, so he's very anti-Mormon. I hadn't fallen anti-Mormon thing or the whole Christian thing, but, you get caught up in the whole experience of your fellow classmates, your friends going, and it's a bunch of singing and fun, and it was fun. And they had a video of a camp, Saranac Lake, upstate New York. It was Saranac Camp, and it looked like a lot of fun. You go up there for a week and you water ski, and they capture the flag and you do all the fun stuff. And I wanted to go. However, the Mormon Church that I was a member of had a different sort of path they wanted me to take, which was they wanted me to go up to upstate New York, to Palmyra, New York, where they put on the pageant, which is the reproduction of the Book of Mormon, or the story of the Book of Mormon.
You got like 10 seconds.
And so what ended up happening behind because I had made no decisions as to what I was going to do. I didn't decide whether I was going to go to New York or if I was going to go to Saranac Lake.
I got to stop you now, Arthur.
Okay.
I apologize. Sure. We've only got 45 seconds left. Please feel free to email tv@atheist-community.org. I wouldn't mind talking to you. I'd love to have a continued discussion. And also, you can tune in again next week and even call back then if you want to. Thanks to everybody, to all our callers. Thanks to the crew: Steve Elliott, Joe Rhodes, Frank Michelle, Silling, Cy, Shelley Roberts, John Icoletti, and Don Baker, who is right here.
That's me.
We'll be back again next week. Enjoy your Easter holiday, whether you celebrate it or not. Have a good piece of chocolate. Drive safely. Take care of each other. Be nice to each other. And we'll see you again next week.
Thank you to our callers.